So Mangalore has long been a multicultural and cosmopolitan town, shaped over centuries by trade, migration, ecology, and the meeting of different cultures and traditions. Rather than telling a single story, linear stories of history, this talk explores how the city's heritage is made up of many different cultural perspectives and narratives, each contributing to the character of the place we know today. To share these insights, we are joined by Caroline D'Souza and Mervin Rosario, who will reflect on how the built and ecological heritage of Mangalore connects the past, present, and the future of the city. Please join me in welcoming both Caroline and Mervin on stage. So Caroline D'Souza is a conservation architect and faculty member at Srinivas Institute of Technology in Mangalore, and her research explores the heritage ecosystems of port towns along India's west coast, including historic trading networks, cross-cultural influences in Tulunad. And Mervin Rosario is an engineer, educator, and principal. And heritage enthusiast who researches the archives and histories of Mangalore. He is passionate about making local history accessible to the public. That's how I met Mervin, through the Coastal Heritage Collective Heritage Walks, and exploring how traditional knowledge can inform contemporary life. They both co-founded the Coastal Heritage Collective, an initiative that brings Mangalore's layered, pluralistic histories to life through heritage walks, workshops, and public storytelling. So today they will share how stories of place can connect the past, present, and future. Please take it away.
Thank you, Shalini. So we decided to name our presentation today The Heterogeneous Layered Urbanism of Mangalore. As Charlene told us, our city has a very layered history, rooted in its ecology, rooted in its trade networks, rooted in its topography, and mostly rooted in its geography. So we'll now start. Where's the next one? Oh, next one. Okay, sorry. All right. This is one of Santosh's paintings. Mangalore has always been a bustling port town for centuries, ever since trade winds existed, right? And it's been shaped by its seasonal ecology, topography, and its topography. The old port, once the city's lifeline, still is a very important cultural identity for the area. Now we just want to talk about the trade winds because they are such an important geographical aspect that shaped all the cities, port cities along the west coast of India and the world over basically. So when in school in geography we study that in summers the land heats up and then at night the land cools down and there's this differentiation of pressure that is created because of which there are trade winds that take place, because of which there are winds that take place across the water surfaces. And these winds, these monsoon winds, are what brought people from land masses across, is there a pointer? Okay, from land masses across the sea interfaces into our land. So if we see these red arrows here, those are the winds that brought people from West Asia all the way into our coast, because of which we had a very cosmopolitan setup. Mervin and I were just discussing this morning about how we have such a narrow strip of land that is sort of protected by the Western Ghats and the sea on the other edge, and we have such a different cultural identity. And I was telling him how I feel more at home traveling to Calicut than I would traveling to Bangalore. And it is this landmass and the sea interface that has sort of segregated this entire region and created this narrow strip of a very, very different cultural identity. When it comes to Mangalore, we'd like to show you this GIS map here. The darker regions show an elevated profile, and the lighter regions show a lower profile. And we see two rivers circumventing our entire city. And we also see a large sand spit Someone had a eureka moment today. What was a sand spit, right? When the rivers actually spits out sand and create this water body across in front of the river and then divides the sea and the river with a little narrow strip. We have a very, very thriving community in Mangalore that lives on the sand spit. We'll talk about that later. And how do ports exist, and what gives it its its economical viability? Because of the Ghats and because of the hinterlands that are present beyond the water frontages, right? So here we have a lot of produce that was produced in the Western Ghats, and somehow our ancestors found Ghat passes to bring it all the way down to the river mouth, and then trade in those elements, and then take it across the waters. So relationships were such that there was a variety of rice which was called Muscati rice, because in West Asia rice wasn't grown, but it was still a very important carbohydrate that people depended on for their daily existence. So all these things created these relationships across the waters.
Oh. Okay. This is one of the maps that we looked at in the morning in one of the workshops. Maps were very treasured things because those hid the secrets of trade, and trade was what made money. Once you knew the secret to buy pepper from the source, then usually till 1600s, pepper was being traded to the East European countries via Arabia, and so there was a lot of middlemen, a lot of money making, which the Portuguese sort of circumvented when they found a direct route to India, and that made them huge, filthy amounts of profits and money, and because of which these were very guarded guarded secrets. But one of the beautiful things that you see in this is, by the way, Mangalore is marked right on the top, if you see. And even earlier in a map in early 1500s, we see Mangalore marked very prominently. If you see all the rivers, all the towns, these are port towns, and the port towns form where rivers join the sea. Can anyone in the audience just make a guess as to why a port town is formed where a river joins the sea, like Netravati joining the ocean, versus say Surathkal or say Ullal or somewhere in between? Why doesn't a port form there, but why did the port form in Mangalore? Can anyone sort of? One would be inland transport. The rivers form an inland sort of river transport, that is river trading that happens. But also, if you see Mangalore's geography in an earlier map, the river sort of hugs the city. And where the river joins this ocean, it forms a whole sort of embankment where the ships or boats can dock. And that is where you can unload and load your factory items. And that is why a lot of port towns are formed where there are rivers joining the ocean. So that is an ecological reason why naturally Mangalore became one of the port towns. Yeah. And there is a lot of textual corroboration for this. One of the first texts that talks about Mangalore possibly was in the 1st century, written by Pliny. And Pliny, we hear about Ptolemy in our mathematical theorems, but these Ptolemies also wrote historical texts. And they wrote about the pepper that was being traded from the Malabar coast in a very negative sense. They wrote about how the pepper, whenever the pepper ships come from the Malabar coast, they drain our pockets, they drain the Roman Empire of all the gold and the silver. And it wasn't talked in a positive sense. There is a reference to one of the city of Nitrias, which some people suggest might have been the earlier name of Mangalore, coming from Netravati river, but other historians claim it might be the city of Honavar, the port town of Honavar. Teak was also one of the main item that was being traded. Later in 6th century, there is one of the texts, Cosmos Indica something, that talks about Manjaroon, the name of the city called Manjaroon, being traded, trading pepper, yeah, and other spices. There was, as Caroline said, the winds, the southwest monsoon winds and the northeast monsoon winds were called trade winds, literally for this reason. Before the 1st century or so, people used to trade. These ships used to come from Arab to the coast, but they would take around 3 months. But somewhere around the 1st century was when they discovered that if they catch these southwestern monsoon winds, they can reach from Aden in Yemen to the Malabar coast in 45 days. So cutting their journey by half. And what they would do is a huge fleet of around 200 ships would be somewhere in Yemen. At the early monsoons, they would all set sail, come to the Malabar coast, do their trade. Once their trade is done, it was time for the northeast monsoon winds, which would take them back to their hometown. So it was a perfect sort of symphony of these trades and this winds. Yeah. There were a lot of maps. One of the maps that Praveen was talking about in the morning was this long linear map that is there in one of the museums. It looked at the world, it's a Roman era map. It looked at the world as a linear geography. And at the end, there is Muziris and Tundis, which are the Malabar ports. And if you see, this was Al-Idrisi's map, somewhere around 1100, an Arab traveler. And you see the Arab portion of it, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, that is perfectly mapped. And the rest of it is sort of slightly distorted. And yeah, so that was very well traveled and that was very well mapped. Yeah. And later, during the 7th century, their religion has always traveled across with trade. There are several examples of this. The first example is there were recent excavations in Egypt, in a town called Bernike, where which was a port town during the Roman times. And there they found this Buddha statue from the 1st century BC. So it's amazing that there is a Buddha in Egypt, of all places. And in a temple in Egypt, they were worshipped. During their worship, they have found Malabar pepper being used as as an item of worship. Now, as an offering. These days we give gold, silver, and that time they had given this Malabar pepper, which was weighed as they used to weigh peppercorns, count peppercorns, as written in these earlier texts. And so religion has always moved. Similarly, once Islam was formed, Arabs accepted Islam, and Islam also came along the coast, and this whole Malabar trade has accepted the faith, the trader community of the Biari community. Similarly, even Hinduism spread somewhere around the 7th, 8th century. So Hinduism was very well established along the eastern coast, and I don't know if some of you have traveled along Southeast Asia, you would see this magnificent sort of temples there. So Hinduism also was one of the religion that trade brought about. Yeah. And this you see in a beautiful mosque. Do you want to speak about this, Carol? Yeah. So this is a mosque that is in Mangalore. It's called the Zinat Baksh Mosque. At first sight, you will say, hey, this looks like a temple, or this looks like a Tarawad, or a Kerala house. And actually, there are these 10 mosques that have been built along the Malabar coast, which are in this fashion. And the reason why it's very different from a usual mosques of domes, minarets, was that the Islam that is practiced here was not the Islam that came from North India. This Islam came along with the traders, the Arab traders. And this is much more older than the Islam that we think came from North India, from the Mongols. And so at that time, when you think of a place that you want to worship, you want to build the best sort of architecture for your God. And at that time, the domes and minarets had not developed. And so what developed was this style of house, this style of architecture. And this was how they built their mosques at that point of time. And that the community has made sure to preserve this architecture along. And even though this particular mosque was renovated somewhere around 1780s, 1790s, still 200 years old, they maintained the structure, they maintained the style, and did not, at the same point, there was, Tipu had rebuilt this, and at the same time he built a mosque in Srirangpatnam, which had a different style. So he could have easily built this also in a different style, but there was the sensitivity to keep that, keep this mosque in its style. Yeah. And you see, these are the 10 few of the mosques along the Malabar coast. They're in Talasheri and different places up to Kollam. Yeah, there are 10 mosques. The closest one in Kasargod, and very jarring to the mind if you think about mosques as domes and minarets, but very beautifully enlightening these places are. Yeah. Yeah.
Mangalore, there has not been a lot of archaeological surveys that have taken place in our narrow coastal strip because of way the British sort of drew out our states and the borders that were created. So a lot of archaeological work has been taking place in areas where politicians thought it would be more viable. But we have to understand that in a region where they had trade ever since the winds existed, would have been very, very historically rich. And just as an example of that, very recently there has been patronage to understand how trade took place in the 12th century between Aden and Mangalore. So there were little fragments of business papers found in a synagogue in Cairo, and these little fragments are now called the Cairo-Geniza documents. And how did these documents stand, last over the last 8th century? So when the Jews conducted business, they always wrote the name of Yahweh at the top, and anything with the name of Yahweh at the top of the page or anywhere on the page could not be destroyed, and therefore it was stacked over one another in the basement of the synagogue till someone from I think it was Columbia University, I'm not really sure, one of the bigger universities, found these fragments and made it a lifetime of their, gave a lifetime of their work towards preserving it and documenting it and translating it. And there we see Mangalore's name come up over and over again multiple times, talking about trade. And especially there's one trader called Abraham Ben Yeju, who comes from Aden, settles down in Mangalore, starts a family in Mangalore, has children here, brings them up in the Jewish faith, and then at some point of time decides to go back and settle in his hometown. So there are a lot of missing loose ends here. But if you have to bring someone up in the Jewish faith, there definitely has to be a rabbi or a synagogue in the area itself, something that has been lost over a period of time. Today, with the onset of urbanization and drastic changes along our coast, it's unfortunate that we have lost a lot of missing clues which could have been unearthed if archaeological activities took place in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, like how ASI was pushing for in the whole of India. There is another traveler that came in the 13th century, Ibn Battuta, and he speaks about this bustling trading town where there are Hindus and Muslims, people of all faiths working together and trading in business. And here we have this whole list of documents which actually mention Mangalore in its texts. These wonderful illustrations are made by another one of our co-founders, Deepika, who's studied from Bartlett in UK and works there. She illustrated all the things that were used in the trading system. And these are little texts that are direct lift-offs from the text from the accounts of the travelers. This is a 16th century map. So we have a Bokaro map in 1635 and we have a Portuguese map in 1569. And we love this map, especially on our walks, because I think it's one of the perfect examples to show what a cosmopolitan city this area was, this region was, even back in 1635. If we look at this map on the right here by Bokaro, we see in the sandspit there already is a mosque in 1635. We see there is a church within the Portuguese fort, and we see up there, you see a water tank there. It's, what is the... and the tree, and with the little katte around it could probably be Mangal Devi with the Yemekere on the side. So we already have a very cosmopolitan sort of situation in our city in the 17th century itself. These are tombstones of Portuguese admirals that were found very recently. Mervin will talk more about their translation.
So this is right now in the Rosario Church. If any one of you can go and are interested, you can go and see. It translates, it's in Portuguese. It translates to "Here lies the body of Domingos de Moura Coutinho, captain of the fort of Mangalore, and died in 1629. It was found as a washing stone. It was being used as a washing stone, and someone found it, and thankfully it is being shown right now in the Rosario Cathedral. One thing which is nice to see here, if you see every Portuguese, when someone of significance would die, there would be a coat of arms that would be drawn for their family. And this particular coat of arms has 5 castles and 5 stars. And the castles correspond to the coat of arms of the Moura family, which was a very prominent family in Portugal. And the 5 stars correspond to the Coutinho family, again, another prominent family in Portugal. So what you see here, his name is a Moura Coutinho. And so you find both these coat of arms sort of mixed and put here. And to see, it is this thick, the granite slab, and it's really beautiful to see this stone. There are veins visible from that time, and it's a really nice piece of history. Yeah. Yeah.
This is an elevation of Mangalore from the 1670s. So in the 17th century, what Mangalore looked like from the waterfront. And if we see, it's a very, very highly sensitive ecological mounds all over the area. We can see a fort present on the extreme right. There's probably the mound of the DC office in the middle. And there is a bazaar. If you see that little thing written there on top in Dutch, it means the bazaar that was burnt down. So the bazaar was burnt down multiple times during wars. But thanks to this one person who sat on a boat and painted what we saw, we now have a little snapshot of what Mangalore would have looked like from across the waters in the 17th century. These are some zoom-ins which Mervin insisted we put, just to show the kind of variation in built typology we had back in the 17th century. Right? The tiles were not even invented yet, but we already had a sort of mixed roofing system that already existed, most probably with thatch or pot tiles, or a lower version of what the Basil Mission created. And we also had 2-story structures, which this Dutch guy already sort of recorded back in the day. This is a beautiful map done by Lafitte de Brazier, and it was drawn in 1779 when Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan were working along this area. And because this conference is about ecology, we'd just like to invite you to take a look at all the natural elements that are present on this map. Take a look at the water. Please take a look at the sand spits. the little estuary where the rivers meet and then enter into the sea. And even the settlement, if you see there, you see that they respect the water bodies, you see that they respect the water channels and have built around them. And the water channels are all supporting agricultural produce. The mounds are still intact. They are used for fortification pieces. And we have a fort that is sort of already supported and kept safe with a moat around it, with water flowing into the rivers. So Mangalore, over a period of time, has been a very ecologically sensitive land, and our ancestors have understood over time how to build and live on this land. Somehow, over a period of time, I think with formal education, we sort of lost the art of understanding and started creating placing globalized solutions in a city as ecologically sensitive as ours. And because of which we now have floods in the city when it rains. It's not normal to have roads flooding in a city where we're naturally draining off into the sea. So where are we going wrong? How can we go back to the table and sit with bureaucrats and decision makers and bring about change to ensure that our city is safe?
Yeah, so there were missionaries from Switzerland, German-speaking missionaries, who had come somewhere around 1830s, 1840s, and this was a map drawn in 1850, roughly dated around that time. Again of Mangalore, you see the two water bodies hugging Mangalore. There's also this sort of rivulet, if you see here. This is the rivulet near Alake. If you cross, there's a bridge there. You see sort of the fort that was seen in the previous slide is sort of demolished, and there's a road passing right through it. That's the road. If you have gone to State Bank area, right at State Bank, there's a road going down till Bandar, and that is the same road. It used to be called Fort Road. Now it's called Port Road. But Fort Road in the earlier text, and that's where I think Carolyn first started investigating about there being a fort in Mangalore. We had no idea there was a fort in Mangalore. And it started from there, and then looking at Google Maps and trying to collaborate how Google Maps looked versus how these maps looked. And one important thing is there's a line of trees that forms around an abandoned fort. Hyder had built this fort, but it had worked against Tipu twice, and so he demolished the fort and made it into gardens. It was still the seat of power after the British took over, and even after independence for a few years, up to around 30 years ago, the district collector's office was there, after which it got moved. But it's still a place of historical significance. And yeah, so this is how the Basel Mission map looks like. This is that main road. This is mentioned as Kacheri in that map, which was 200 years ago, 150 years ago, sorry, 1850. Yeah, and this is how it looks like in today's map. How you correlate older maps to new maps it's very difficult. You have to sit and stare at maps for a long time. But one of the nice things you can see is, if you see this sort of bent road and a sort of a triangle forming there, the same triangle is still there on Google Maps. That's the Nelikai Road and the Bandar region. So you can correlate roads to older maps because roads develop even though the surroundings of roads develop over time, the roads by themselves remain. And the major arterial roads are still there from 150 to 200 years ago. So, yeah.
And why roads remain? Because our ancestors chose to walk along paths of least resistance. So they found ways to easily reach areas, and we have somehow just managed to just follow those same areas. So if you actually, when the cows go back home, if you follow them, that is the best path to take, maybe the most scenic or the easiest, So that's the ecological perspective. They allowed water to flow and they walked themselves in parts of least resistance. So even if you look at NH1 in India is the old Silk Route that connected across all the different countries, Afghanistan and then all the way into Persia.
This is an old sketch, probably a slightly exaggerated version of Hyder Ali's fort from the Second Anglo-Mysore War in 1783. One surprising thing that I read in one of the archives was that Mangalore was known as a burnt city, a city that would always get burnt multiple times. And that was really shocking for me. This was one of the times that probably Mangalore was under a major war. The Second Anglo-Mysore War, which was again the Tipu against the British, which was being fought here in Mangalore. Yeah. Also, the seat of power that I talked to you about. This is a photo from the Basel mission, probably somewhere around 1850s, and this is a photo from our camera. And you look at the star. This is better. Something wrong. Yeah, so this part of the building is probably somewhere around 200 years old, while the other parts are newer additions. And this right now, because Carolyn and her team of students did a whole documentation exercise that she'll talk about, we have managed to secure some funds, and there is some renovation, some preservation work going on. Not very sure how successful, but something will happen. Yeah, there are also, when you stare at maps, you have to have a lot of time to sit and stare at maps. One is the roads, the other thing are tanks. So there was this particular tank that was repeatedly seen in all maps, which was a prominent map tank. And later Carolyn also found out that this was right outside the KCCI in Bandar, which Dikshit later researched and saw that somewhere around 1960s was where the locals sort of petitioned to the government saying that it's not being maintained well, there are a lot of mosquitoes, so you need to close this up. So then they closed it up and made it into, it was supposed to be a park, but now it's a parking. And one of the things that gave it away that it was this particular tank was this Basel mission photo, which has a sort of big cutted tree and the Bazaar Street. So it was labeled as the tank next to the Kachi Memon Masjid. And you see the Bazaar right in front of you. And even today, if you stand at the same spot, you will still see that Bazaar. The tree has, of course, gone. There's a new tree, but still there's a tree of prominence, which would have been a tree of prominence. And this whole region was this stepped tank. Unfortunately, we are left with very few water tanks today. There's one more in the next slide, I think.
I just want to interject here, and I mean, in this presentation, we're just saying, someone told us there was a tank, we saw this tank, we found this photo, and then see how it correlates. But we want to tell you that it's been a journey. Someone told me this was a tank in 2018. This is now 2026, and over the years we've been looking at things, staring at maps, looking at roads, going through archives, where we found one such photo that helped us substantiate that it was a map. So it's a long journey and it's a long process. Today you'll hear about all these things where we're just saying, okay, this is this map, this is that map. It's not been an easy journey also, it's been a long journey, and we'll take you to the next tank. Yeah.
This was another tank that Dikshit and I just found. Again, if you see, this is current day Google Maps, and that was that Basel mission map. You see this sort of peculiar bend here, and a similar bend here, there, upstairs. So that's how we guess probably, and there's this huge tank here, right at the top. And we couldn't really see that in Google Maps, so we went to the spot, and we found out, we went inside one compound, trespassed inside the compound, and to see, illi tank idya, and surely there was a tank. It was a huge tank, but it was half covered, so it's slightly smaller. But later we found out that the temple associated with that was also historically significant. It was, the road is called the Trishuleshwara Temple Road, and this bronze statue that we found in one of the books by Gurraj Bhatt, a historian, we found in this whole, this was the sanctum of the temple. Can you guess where this bronze murti is? Right at the bottom, this small thing. So this thing is a bronze statue from somewhere around 1500s. Yeah.
The advent of the British, we had a lot of new formal urbanization taking place, and they also introduced locomotive infrastructure in the form of railways. And we all say, yeah, we have to thank the British for this locomotive infrastructure. But we also have to know that when locomotive infrastructure is introduced into urban dense areas, what happens to the people who live there, right? And those people were shifted across the river into the sand spits. Okay, and there were a community of Hindus as well as a community of Muslims, and their areas are now divided by this large playground. And when they were sent over to the waters, it's not, and said, just go and stay there. It's not like papers were given and said, you know, you will get this plot and you will get this and you will get 5 cents and you will get 7 cents. People just had to go and pitch a tent and live. And today, even today, it's been so difficult for the community to get their papers and say, this is the land that actually belongs to me. And I see community members still nodding, and we acknowledge that this is what you all are going through. Okay, we'll just skip to why Coastal Heritage Collective. We're a group of 5 individuals that came together informally in 2023, and we registered our trust in April 2025. We do walks in the city. Many people know us through walks, but we do a lot of liaison with the government as well. We do a lot of education initiatives, and we have now understood that this is us. 4 of us are here present in this community. Deepika is in the UK. We also understand that it's very important to document, to speak, and to let the community know about our heritage. And over a course of time, we are hoping that the communities where we hold these walks get involved with our work, so that we hold our elected people accountable when there are larger changes that take place. Like this beautiful MCC office that has been brought down in 2023. We have the Belvedere convent that was brought down last year. The DC called us in, as an expert panel to give a report, but it was so last minute because it was put on social media. Very, very recently, we lost the Kayyar Church. We tried to give a statement of heritage significance. We even got a stability report from the National Institute of Technology in Suratkal. But still it did not matter, and a lot of egos are at play when it comes to heritage. So therefore, heritage is something that should be introduced at policy level, at an upper level, and only then will it trickle onto the ground. It's great that we have avenues like this today where we can have these conversations. I'd like to show you a small impact of, I feel, Coastal Heritage Collective. We got permission from the DC, and with my very talented students, we sat at the place for 2 months and documented the entire complex. Please understand that all that we do is pro bono. We are not getting paid for this. We also have our own personal lives and our professional lives, and this is something we do in additional to that. After handing over these documents to the office, we have sat in meetings with the revenue minister, where he had meetings on site with him, where he finally said, okay, this is a place that has to go back to the citizens of Mangalore, and an amount of 2 crores was given to our district administration. Currently, renovation process is taking place. Of course, there are no consultants on board. Nirmiti Kendra is doing their bit. We also have completed a digitization archival project with lab hopping under a past initiative by NCBS. So we have archived all the old magazines from this college, St. Aloysius College. We have donated a Hiniso cabinet so that humidity and temperatures are kept at a constant. And in the future, we're looking at taking care of heirs of the ecosystem. So the ICOMOS, as the International Council of Monuments and Sites, have now introduced this new declaration which is the Ganma Declaration on Heritage Ecosystems. Heritage is today no longer standalone. It lays across the cross-section of society, and what the most important in heritage are the heirs of heritage and the ones who take them forward. And we no longer can look at heritage as just a monument. We can adapt it to new use, and how do we take it forward? And we from our collective have understood that it's no longer just the adults where we take for walks. We have to work with students on ground. We have now come across some investors and donors who have understood that this is an idea that needs to be taken forward. And this year, hopefully, if all the forces are with us, we'll try and implement something with 3 schools, go back with statistics and see how this works, and then take it forward as a longer program for the city of Mangalore, and hopefully manage to grow it over the years.
Last slide.
We want to end with this garish image that the Smart City Mission has created for our city, without understanding the people's perspective, or people whose land this belongs to. I mean, the Mogavirs have a very personal connection with the water, and what is this? I mean, I don't know. We'll just end with that.
That's great, Caroline. Thank you for bringing this up, because tomorrow morning we have someone from Smart Cities in our panel discussion. And this is the thing, right? It is these different perspectives. And Caroline and Mervin, thank you so much. You know I'm a big fan of Coastal Heritage Collective. So thank you for that insightful talk. And can we change the slide? Maybe we don't want to keep Smart Cities up while I'm talking. Our presentation. Yes, the general one, yeah. So one thing that I wanted to say is that your reflections remind us that Mangalore's heritage is not a single story, but a rich tapestry that is shaped by many cultures, ecologies, and histories over centuries, and also across the globe, which is superbly fascinating. For me, seeing those old maps and taking the time to actually sit with the layers that you all uncovered through that kind of dissection are layers of history that are now embedded in this city that became so inspiring. And it makes me feel more connected to the place that I live in now. And it's almost like getting to know a person and then becoming their best friend. And so I hope that that passion and the care that you all bring to telling these pluralities of stories helps more people fall in love with Mangalore in the same way. So please join me in thanking Caroline and Mervin once again. And I have not forgotten, we will have Q&A now. Excuse me. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi guys, admiration. Thank you so much for someone as a migrant going from Mangalore to Bangalore for opportunity. When I see works like this coming from individuals, it fills my heart with so much of pride and thing with, I always look for a mix of envy and inspiration. This is perfect, where you feel that, okay, damn, why I'm not involved in this, but thank you for this. This is amazing. I wanted to ask in terms of educationally, we are never taught to bring pride. Our pride is always through homes and things. What can we do from an education point of view where we tell our stories a bit more definitely and a bit more clearly, so that the younger generation take up such kind of things with pride and intent and focus. So what can we do in terms of school policies where individuals can come together? And because I don't see this coming from top down, And I see why there is a reason to do that. What can we do as a policy, as individuals, to get together and involve with kids? And because the next generation are the only ones I see hopeful for to bring any sort of change. So what can we do?
I think you've just asked us a question that what we have planned for this year, hopefully to take place. So we want to now start at grassroots level. One of the reasons I came back and became a professor in a local college of architecture was because I was just drawing toilets for the sheikh and earning a lot of money. But I felt like we have to educate our own children. And after 10 years of teaching, I think we already have created enough warriors for this area. But now I feel we also have to integrate all students, even students who are not from architecture. And how do we do that? We do that from applying this to a cross-section of schools. So for this year, we're looking at 3 schools, hopefully one with the CBSE with a little higher end fees, one an SSLC school and one a government school, because we feel the entire demographical cross-section of children need to be included in this entire process. It's not only the kids who can afford, it's not only the ones who can make these highty-flighty decisions and then decide if they just want to migrate because the AQI is very high. You know, we need, so we're looking at inclusivity. We want to create free walks, we want to create free workshops, but we need food on our tables and a roof above our heads. So we are seeking donors. We have some people who are willing to help, and we're willing to do the groundwork, and it's something that we are looking forward to starting. And we want to do this for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, arm ourselves with statistics and then go back to the government. But that is going to again be a very, very slow process. So we want to continue to keep working on ground and parallelly work with our leaders as well.
I'll also say something that history is taught very boringly in our schools. There are just Battle of Panipat and Plassey, which we have no connection to. We are hoping to change that in a small way with this program that people they connect to. Today morning we were looking at a map, and right next to Kadri temple there was something called golf course, and in a map in 1959 to see Kadri Park was a golf course, marked as a golf course in 1959, is just mind-blowing where you go every time. These kind of things where people relate to the coast, the histories, their stories. We want to bring that about. Analyze history versus just give facts. That is something that we are trying to hopefully work with.
And one more thing we're very particular about with children is to ensure that they understand pluralistic histories. Not your history is better than mine or mine is better than yours. Everyone's history exists, and we should sort of respect it and grow together. And we need one and all to grow together. It's not just small factions or bigger factions or those who can afford it. So we are very particular about this.
One more thing to this, like we usually, because whatever the history is presented in front of us is more from the outsider to us. Can we draw parallels in some way that what is happening? Because the issue is that Tulu is morely a oral culture, and our oral histories are just spoken about, and in history we don't consider that as a treasure or rightful information. So is there in any way that oral history and a documented history could be presented in a larger picture?
So we are now looking at curating experiences where the community leads. We just had one last year, one very, very simple one, which was kotige making, but we made the ladies lead. And we want to tell you that, you know, there was a lot of backlash saying, oh my God, this workshop was for $1,000, but it was just kotige making. But we want you to know how the money was split, because we're very, very transparent. 75% of the proceeds went to the ladies making kotige. For us, it was just a very small amount. It's not even enough to, frankly, cover my fuel costs up and down when I was planning the kotige making presentation. So we want the community to be involved. And the ladies, the grandmother in the home, she was the wife of a RSS Shaka who every weekend rolled out 600 chapatis to feed those men who thought were saving the nation. Right? And she felt, when I was finally giving that money, and we took this little photo, and I had my little daughter handing this money to her, she felt like, oh my God, don't give this to me, I don't deserve it. women always felt like they just had to do this background work and they never deserved anything monetarily. We want to change that. We want to tell these women who cleaned the fish and who made the masalas and who made the papads that you are worth it and you're an equal contributor to our history. So we're trying to change it via community. We're now in talks with a Bahri woman as well. That yesterday I got a contact from a Muslim boy who was trying to sell me kulki. He told me he's living on the sandspits in Bengre. So we're trying to involve the community more and more because so much of it is not written. We totally acknowledge that a lot of our work is very Western driven because of maps, but maps was just a starting point. And therefore this is sort of going to be a lifetime of work. It's not just one presentation, you know. 5 years down the line, we'll have a whole lot of stories to tell you.
More power to you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, and unfortunately, that'll have to be the last question.
Hi, Caroline and Mervin. My name is Sampreet, and I've been trying to do something similar back in Udupi as well. And I've been in touch with the government and many other stakeholders involving temple restoration or even Udupi jail. I think we've met there as well. So my question to you is, could you elaborate on that particular point about ego at play that you said during the presentation? And because a lot of the work also has, as much as it has to do with creating awareness about heritage and educating the students, likewise the adults, we need to work hand in hand with politicians, with bureaucrats. And so in your experience in the last 5 years, I guess, how has that been, and can you elaborate more on that?
When I used ego at play, it was very, very specific to one particular project. But I want to tell you that how we start is we just start on ground. And we have to start pro bono. And we have to have the community understand and tell us that, oh my God, what you're doing is world class. We have to have the district administration come and say, okay, we need your help for certain things. So, and that has been our journey, and that has been our learning. We started our walks with, you know, like $500 per walk with breakfast, not making anything, literally. But over a period of time, we've had Nirmiti Kendra coming and saying, you know, we need your help. We have had the district administration coming in and saying, we need your help. And everything is not on paper. They acknowledge that they need our help and they need us in this city. But so much of the work is done pro bono. So we put a lot of things aside and say, we will do it because we belong to this city. Just like how this summit has come up. No donors. Everything pro bono. Yeah, in kind.
Just to add, so I think one thing is the easiest way, there is a necessity, like even in the case of Udupi jail, there was a necessity to create some rooms. Even in the case of that Belvedere church, there was a necessity for aged people to come and stay. There's always a necessity. And the only way we know is to demolish a building, build a new concrete structure, have their name in the plaque, so that 50 years after, people will say, oh, this nun or this priest has, made this. So that's the only way that we know. We haven't seen enough examples where, say one example that comes to the top of my mind, which is a bad example, is Gajali Hotel, which is the circuit house, which has been, even though it is being used as a restaurant, it is a structure of, it's an old structure. And that is why we are very much, this DC office that, the old DC office that is being renovated, we had a lot of brainstorming sessions as to what can be done. We're trying to show the government that there are a lot of possibilities with beautiful things that can come. The knowledge is not lost. Just because a contractor doesn't know how to do a lime plaster, he just knows how to do cement, doesn't mean that the knowledge is not there. The knowledge is there. We just need to find the right people, and show that it can be beautifully. Even the KCCI office has been made into a pitched roof kind of thing. You know, you can put some beautiful lighting and make the space really stand out. And you know, we don't need to lose our identity of Mangalore. And what heartens me is when people from outside, tourists, come and say a lot of, there is still some heritage left in Mangalore. For us, I mean, everything is dying. but we see it from a very insider perspective. For people coming outside, it's from Bangalore or Delhi, where nothing really remains. It's just concrete structures. So in relation to that, we are still at a better place, but we need to sort of, kind of keep this so that we have some references to how Mangalore was centuries ago, and we just,
Yeah, thanks, Mervin. That's actually a really good point to end on, and that's exactly why the Mangaluru Design Summit's theme is designing futures and honoring heritage, for that same passion-driven conversation that we've been having, not only in this presentation, but connected throughout our talks. And so thank you so much. As a token of our appreciation, you also get a beautiful potted flowers. And I'll let Anjali do the honors of giving our thanks with this token. Two pots. Oh wait, one group photo. Group photo. And I'm also going to just like photobomb.